I'll be talking about the nature and tools of research. So research is not merely about gathering information, rummaging around for hard to locate information, transporting facts from one location to another. So that's not our definition of research. Research is a word that is used loosely in everyday conversation and therefore must be defined clearly for professional use. Research, according to Criswell, is a systematic process of collecting, analyzing, and interpreting information or data. And the data could be qualitative or quantitative data. What is the goal of research? To increase our understanding of a phenomenon about which we are interested or concerned. Our focus is on formal research or research intended to be communicated to a scientific community. So remember, it's actually intended for a scientific community. The research process is cyclical. So it starts with the identification of a research problem. Then we go into the articulation of the goal of the research process. Then we go into the principal components, into the principal problem and the sub-problems. And in general, we look at into the general statement of the problem and the specific statement of the problem. The researcher identifies assumption as well as possible hypotheses. Then we go into the development of the specific plan of the entire research process. Then we go into the collection, organization, and analysis of data in order to answer the statement of the problem. Then we go into the interpretation of the data. And the next one is into the dissemination of the research findings, the conclusions, as well as the recommendations. It's actually in terms of iterative steps. Number one, we look at into the identification of a question or problem, which is normally an unanswered question. Number two, articulate a goal. Number three, divide the principal problem into more manageable sub-problems. As I mentioned, we have the general statement of the problem and the specific statement of the problem. Next, you're going to identify the hypotheses and assumptions. Then develop a specific plan. How are you going to undergo the entire research process? What is step number one? What is step number two? What is step number three? So forth and so on. Then you go into the collection, organization, or presentation, and then analysis of informations or data. Then interpret the data as they relate to the statement of the problem, into the specific statement of the problem, as well as the general statement of the problem. Then we go into the assumption. An assumption is a condition that is taken for granted. Two general assumptions that underlie most research projects. The first one, the phenomenon under investigation is somewhat lawful and predictable. Second, cause and effect relationships can account for certain patterns observed in the phenomenon. Next, we go into hypotheses. So what is a hypothesis? A hypothesis is, number one, a logical supposition. Number two, a reasonable guess. Number three, an educated conjecture. A hypothesis provides tentative explanation for a phenomenon under investigation. A hypothesis may be a direct thinking to possible sources of information necessary to resolve the research problem and its sub-problems. A hypothesis is not unique to research. Just imagine any time you've made a guess about the cause of some phenomenon. Hypotheses that are proposed prior to any data collection are called a priori hypotheses. I repeat, hypotheses that are being proposed prior to any collection of data are called a priori hypotheses. Then we go to types of research. We have quantitative research, involves looking at amounts or quantities of one or more variables of interest. Then we have qualitative research, involves looking at characteristics or qualities that cannot be entirely reduced to numerical values. Then we have mixed method research, a combination between quanti and qualitative research designs. Mixed method research uses a combination of quantitative and qualitative methods or designs. Next is action research, focused on outcomes for the practitioner. We go into the philosophical orientations towards research. First is on the concept of positivism. What is positivism? With appropriate measurement tools, scientists can objectively uncover absolute, undeniable truths about cause and effect relationships within the physical world and human experiences. Second, post-positivism. What is a post-positivism? True objectivity in seeking absolute truths can be an elusive goal, and researchers bring biases to their work. Next is constructivism. What is constructivism? No absolute truth is actually being claimed in here. The realities researchers identify are simply human-created perceptions and interpretations. Next is about phenomenology. Phenomenology focus is actually on the entire process on how human beings experience themselves and the world as they go through their different lives. Next is pragmatism or realism. Absolute truths may actually exist, even if they are exceedingly difficult to discover. Human beings' self-constructed beliefs about phenomena are legitimate objects of study in their own right. What are the tools of research? First is specific mechanisms or strategies used to collect, manipulate, or interpret data. We have the library and its resources, computer technology, measurement, statistics, language, as well as the human mind. Next is methodology dictates the tools the researcher selects. Library and its resources, access to books, microforms, CDs, DVDs, online databases, fast and efficient means of locating and accessing information, access to library holdings around the world. Computer technology is used for generating and organizing ideas, scheduling, structuring, and coordinating projects, finding literature, networking with others, storing and analyzing data, writing, editing, formatting, producing graphics, presenting results. When we look at measurement, it covers about the usual use in quantitative research. It is more difficult for qualitative research. Common instruments will be scales, rulers, stopwatches. We have also specialized instruments like telescope, MRI, and other laboratory instruments. Main functions of statistics. Now I mentioned about the statistics. What are the main functions of statistics? So describe the data. So we have descriptive statistics. Descriptive statistics summarizes the general nature of the data obtained or being collected. And then we have the inferential statistics. We draw inferences from the data. Inferential statistics help the researcher make decisions about the data or about the informations being collected. Language as a tool allows us to communicate and think more effectively. So it reduces complexity of the world, it allows abstraction of the environment, it enhances the power of thought, it facilitates generalizations and drawing of inferences. Communicating effectively through writing. So it's basically writing. When we talk about research, our writing skills are actually being used. So the first component is actually be specific and precise. Say exactly what you mean. Be direct to the point. Keep your primary objective in mind at all times. What's the primary objective? And that should be the focus at all times. Provide an interview of what you will be discussing. Organize ideas into categories by using headings and subheadings. That's why if you notice when you read theses, when you read dissertations, when you are going to read research articles, you can find headings, you can find subheadings also. Use concrete examples to make abstract ideas more understandable. So we go from a general perspective into specific perspective. Use figures and tables. So normally we use tables, figures in the presentation of the data being collected or in the organization of the data being collected. Regularly summarize what you have said. So whatever you have said are actually being summarized. Anticipate having to write multiple drafts. So the first draft, the second draft, the third draft, and then the final draft, depending on your expertise of writing using the English language. Check your final draft. Grammar, punctuation, spelling, coherence of the ideas or the thoughts presented in the manuscript. Using the tools in word processing software. So beyond the basic tools of word processing software, the following are also quite helpful. Outlining, setting headers and footers, creating tables, inserting graphics, creating footnotes. But now we are not using footnotes. No? I'd like to remind you that we're going to make use of the American Psychological Association. So in our case, we have to make use of the 6th edition of the American Psychological Association or the 7th edition. The 6th edition is downloadable for free, so that would be your assignment. All the time when you are going to cite ideas which are not yours, you are going to apply citation. And the citation that we're going to use is based on the American Psychological Association. And I suggest the 6th edition. Inserting graphics, using international alphabets and characters, tracking changes. General recommendations for using a word processor effectively. So save and back up your document frequently. Use spell checker and grammar checker, but don't rely on them exclusively because no one could replace our human minds. Print out a paper copy for final proofreading and editing. Although in my case, as a practicing researcher, I use different soft copies, but I like to read hard copies and proofread hard copies. The human mind. The most important tool in the researcher's toolbox, used for critical thinking. The human mind is used in evaluating accuracy, credibility, worth of information, lines of reasoning. Evaluation may take a variety of forms, verbal reasoning, argument analysis, probabilistic reasoning, decision-making, hypothesis testing. All of these are actually part of our human mind. In terms of human mind, in terms of reasoning, we use deductive logic as well as the inductive reasoning. In terms of deductive reasoning, it begins with one or more premises, statements, or assumptions that the researcher initially takes to be true, valuable for generating research hypotheses and testing theories. In terms of the inductive reasoning, begins with an observation or a sample information. Observation then used to draw conclusions about the entire classes of objects or events, no, of the entire population. The scientific method as part of the human mind, it actually refers to the process of collecting and analyzing data systematically. Involves thinking actively and intentionally, and then it yields hypotheses. Second is all about theory building, an organized body of concepts and principles. And theory is intended to explain a particular phenomenon. The human mind is actually in terms of collaboration with other minds. That's actually very common in doing research. No one is an island. You have to collaborate with the ideas of other experts, of other professionals, of other scientists. And with this kind of collaboration, it actually increases variety of perspectives, variety of backgrounds, varieties of areas of expertise. And it would actually reduce biases. Exploring research in your field. So we have juried or refereed research report. This is actually referring to judged by experts in the field and deemed to be of sufficient quality and importance to warrant publication. Non-juried or non-refereed report appears in a journal or on the internet without having been reviewed or selected by experts. Some non-juried reports are excellent, but others may not be in that perspective. So, take note of those different concepts as part of our basic concepts in the entire research process. Thank you very much.